How Death Note could have ended differently. Alright, let's talk about Death Note, because honestly, it's one of those shows that everyone has an opinion on. If you've somehow missed this cultural phenomenon, first let's get you caught up. Light Yagami, a high school genius with a serious god complex, finds a notebook, the Death Note. You write a name in it and boom, that person dies of a heart attack unless you specify the cause of death in excruciating detail. So naturally, Light decides, hey, what if I become a literal god and cleanse the world of evil? The show kicks off this psychological chess game between Light, who takes on the alias Kira, and L, a sugar-addicted super detective who's probably on his 7th Red Bull by the time he rolls into the plot. L dies. Spoiler alert, but come on, it's been over a decade. And once Near and Mello step in, it's like the show tries to keep up the pace but never quite hits the same highs. It's still good, but you can't help but think, what if the story took a different path? So, because we love to overanalyze and speculate, let's break down how Death Note could have ended differently, because trust me, there are at least 5 alternate endings that might have been even more satisfying. 1. Light wins. Kira's dystopia rises. First up, the classic, what if Light actually won scenario. Picture this, Mikami doesn't screw up at the last second. Near and his squad fall victim to the perfect plan and Light's identity as Kira remains intact. Now Light is free to continue his godlike rule, slowly but surely turning the world into his version of justice. Crime rates plummet, not because people are suddenly morally superior, but because no one wants to drop dead while stealing a candy bar. Slowly, Kira's influence spreads, and the world starts to change. At first, people fear him. They're not fans of the whole live in fear of getting murdered vibe. But as time goes on, Kira becomes less of a villain and more of a mythological figure, a god that you don't want to cross. But here's where things get interesting. What does absolute power do to someone like Light? Sure, his initial goal was noble. Well, sort of. He wanted to rid the world of evil. But now, he's not just fighting criminals, he's deciding who lives and who dies based on his own warped sense of morality. Maybe he starts executing people for minor offenses, like, forgot to signal during a lane change? Enjoy that sudden heart attack. Didn't pick up after your dog? Better hope Kira's not watching. Light's paranoia would start to creep in too. The longer he rules, the more he realizes he can't afford any slip-ups. Maybe he starts erasing anyone who even thinks about questioning his authority. The final episodes would have us watching Light spiral into a full-on dictator where even the smallest opposition is squashed. The price of his utopia would be his own humanity. It's dark, it's twisted, and it's a terrifyingly logical conclusion to Light's god complex. But hey, in this version, Light wins. Is that a happy ending? Absolutely not. But it's one that would leave us pondering the cost of utopia and whether justice should ever be in the hands of one person. Spoiler, it shouldn't. 2. L lives. Light's nightmare continues. Let's talk about L's death for a second. It was the moment that shocked everyone. L, the guy who seemed one step ahead of Light every time, actually dies. And while it was a bold move, some fans never quite recovered from it. Near and Mello are fine and all, but they're no L. So, let's rewrite history. What if L never died? Let's say L figures out the mechanics of the Death Note in time, maybe manipulates Rem into sparing his life, or maybe he fakes his death and goes underground planning his next move while Light grows more arrogant, believing he's won. This shifts the entire dynamic. Light still thinks he's playing God, but now L's in the shadows plotting his return. The tension ramps up as Light's overconfidence leads him to make small, crucial mistakes. And when L re-emerges, we get the final showdown we all wanted, a battle of wits between two of the smartest minds in anime history. L would be playing with the knowledge of just how close he came to death. And Light? He'd be more desperate than ever to maintain his facade as a righteous savior while simultaneously covering his tracks. Imagine the final episodes, where Light, for once, doesn't have everything under control. L is back, stronger, smarter, and with all the evidence he needs to expose Light. It's not just about who's the smarter detective anymore, it's a battle of egos. L knows he has to stop Light before he gains more power, while Light realizes his dream of becoming a god might be slipping away. And when the dust settles, L wins. Light, exposed, cornered, and without any escape, gets outplayed in the one way he never expected, by L outlasting him. It's the ending that gives us what we were craving, closure on that rivalry that started it all. 3. Misa's redemption arc. Misa Amane. Here's a character who for all intents and purposes got the short end of the stick. She's hopelessly in love with Light even when he treats her like a pawn in his cosmic game of chess. And after Light's death, it's heavily implied that she takes her own life. Tragic? Absolutely. But what if Misa had more agency in the story's final act? In this alternate ending, Misa starts to realize that she's just a disposable piece in Light's grand plan. Maybe she overhears Light talking about how she's no longer useful to him, or maybe she learns about Kiyomi Takada, Light's backup girlfriend. The betrayal hits her hard, and instead of breaking down, Misa decides to take matters into her own hands. She becomes a wild card, working behind the scenes to sabotage Light. Maybe she secretly teams up with Nier, providing him with key information to help take Light down. Or maybe she starts using the Death Note in ways that Light never anticipated. Misa was never dumb, she just got wrapped up in Light's manipulative charm, but now she's seeing clearly. In the final battle, Misa could be the one to turn the tide. Light would never expect her to turn against him, and in that one moment of underestimation, Misa seals his fate. Her final act? Perhaps she sacrifices herself to ensure Light's downfall, but it's on her terms this time. She's not a pawn anymore. She's the queen that takes down the king. This ending would give Misa the arc she deserved, a tragic anti-hero who in the end becomes the key to stopping Kira. 4. Light loses but remains undiscovered. Now this one's a bit of a slow burn nightmare for Light. Picture this, Nier and the task force do stop Kira, but they never actually prove that Light is Kira. Through a series of clever maneuvers, Light manages to pin the blame on someone else. Let's say Mikami, because poor guy was practically built to be the fall guy. The world believes the case is closed and Light walks away a free man. But here's the kicker, Light has lost the Death Note. He's powerless now, stuck in a world that's slipping back into chaos. Crime returns, corruption resurfaces, and all Light can do is watch. He's no longer the god he thought he was. He had the power to change the world, and now it's gone. And the worst part, he has to live with that knowledge. Every crime he sees, every injustice he witnesses is a reminder of how close he came to reshaping the world in his image, only to lose it all. This ending is less about Light being punished externally and more about the internal torment of losing everything. He gets to live, sure, but he's trapped in his own personal hell. It's a slow burn, a psychological prison where Light knows he failed, but can never do anything about it. 5. Ryuk's wildcard ending. Finally, we can't forget about Ryuk, the apple-munching, chaos-loving Shinigami who's just been vibing in the background, watching this entire game unfold like it's his favorite soap opera. Ryuk's been pretty hands-off the whole time, but what if, in the final moments, he decides to spice things up? Imagine Ryuk, bored out of his skull with the current state of affairs, decides to throw Light under the bus for his own amusement. Maybe he casually tips off Nier about the real Kira, or maybe he just gets tired of Light's arrogance and writes Light's name in the Death Note himself. In this version, Light doesn't lose because of some grand miscalculation. He doesn't get outsmarted by Nier or betrayed by Mikami. He loses because Ryuk, the one who gave him the power in the first place, decides the game is over. The last shot of the series is Ryuk back in the Shinigami realm, munching on an apple and laughing at how it all went down. It's the ultimate reminder that to Ryuk, this was all just entertainment. Light thought he was playing God, but really he was just another pawn in Ryuk's game. It's a darkly comedic ending that fits the tone of Death Note perfectly. Light's God complex undone by the very creature that gave him the means to pursue it. So there you have it, 5 alternate endings that could have made Death Note even more legendary. Whether you're Team Light or Team L, it's fascinating to imagine how things could have gone differently.